Hello. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining this evening. Welcome to the 24th of hopefully many episodes of Bard Advice, a D&D / RPG / life advice podcast where I, Charles Chaz Yazik, the DM, the Bard, however you may know me, do my best to answer your questions. We missed last week. Sorry about that. Took a little time off for my birthday. I'm 36 now, officially as of Wednesday. And don't feel any different. But I enjoy my 30s in general. Hope everybody's doing well. Thank you for joining. Hello, Chris, Avram, Flint, Rocco, Pirate. Hello, everyone. Jackal, glad you could make it. Thank you for all the birthday wishes. That was kind of you. All here and in the comments. So, let's get into this. Before we do anything, as we should do at the top of the show, remind everyone to please send your advice questions or your concerns, complaints, criticisms, critiques, whatever you got. Anything like that. Send it over to bardadvice@gmail.com. It also looks like bardadvice, if that helps you remember. In addition to sending your questions to bardadvice@gmail.com, if you want to get some merch, you can go to manshorts.com and get some merchandise. I will say, while I can't give too many details, we are indeed going to be producing more dice. So I don't want to make a real official announcement on that yet, just because I don't have any kind of idea of a time frame or any specifics on the final details of what that will look like. But just know that that's in the works. In the meantime, you can get yourself some shorts or a cool phone case. Manshorts.com. Also, if you want to contribute to anything that I do musically, you can contribute to me at Yazik on Cash App, Venmo, or PayPal. So, now that all of that stuff's out of the way, oh, you know what? We're not done yet, because I've got a new. I'm trying to discipline myself with my notes. So I have a new thing that we do at the top. So we've done the email, the merch, and the music. So the next thing that we'll do at the top is thank all of the patrons. All of your patronage is very appreciated, whether you're doing $1 or $10 or whatever you're doing, whatever you can do. It's much appreciated. Thank you, patrons. Thank you, members on the YouTube channel. As you might be able to see in the live chat here, we do have, whoa, how did this get over here? We do have in the live chat some members here, and they're able to post these cool stickers that normally you're not able to post, like if you're just a regular viewer. So if you want to become a member, you can do so and get access to those stickers. And you get a cool green name as well. That's true. Also, thank you very much to all of the super chatters. Any of those contributions are always greatly appreciated whenever and whatever you can do. And if you're unable to contribute directly financially, it's always appreciated for you to like, comment, rate the podcast on your respective platform, whether that's Apple or Google or here. You can, just a like is thankful enough, and comments are always helpful for the algorithm as well. So. And, oh yeah, and you also get a neat little dude by your name as a channel member, Flint says. So, more incentive. Appreciate all of the contributions from everyone in regard to that, whether financial or just with likes and comments. They're just as powerful, if not more so. Okay, so the only thing that I'm watching this week, and I'll only briefly discuss it because I think that the matchup we're witnessing in the NBA Finals is the throwaway matchup I said a couple of weeks ago on this podcast, because as we know, I thought that we were going to have a Lakers-Celtics final. We indeed are one game into a Denver-Miami final, and I have to say, obviously, this is the battle of Jokic and Jimmy Buckets. Jimmy Butler, by the way, recently trademarked Himmy Buckets. So it'll be interesting to see what comes of that. Personally, I think that Jamal Murray is the real X factor in this series. We know that Nikola Jokic is going to go get a triple-double. That's what he does. He's going to do it every time. And if Jimmy continues to play like he has been, we know what to expect from him. Bam played well in that first game. Haywood Highsmith out of nowhere with 18 points. But I think that Jamal Murray is the real X factor in determining where the series goes. He's the one I think that's in control of the destiny. And if he keeps balling out, I think it's Nuggets in 5. They might even sweep. But that's just a quick little note on NBA. We can just hop on over that. For anybody that's interested, I certainly am. Also, for Art Corner this week, I do have something prepared because I've been obsessed with this all week. So, Kesha has a new album out. It came out a few weeks ago. It's called Gag Order. I got my signed copy earlier this week. I've been listening to it for the last several days. It's really good. And even if you're someone who considers yourself not a fan of Kesha, or you think that it's not interesting at all, I would recommend you give it a try. In particular, the tracks Fine Line, The Drama, Peace and Quiet, and Eat the Acid is good too. They're all good. It's a really good album. I would really recommend that you check it out on your respective listening platforms. Gag Order by Kesha. I think it's awesome. I've always been a fan of Kesha. For a while, it was low-key, and then for the last decade or so, it's like, no, I just love anything that this lady produces. And this album in particular, I think, is her best. So I would recommend checking it out. Anyone who might be interested. All right, so let's move on into some questions. Let's get into this show as to what it's all about. I do have a list of names up. Let me close this note thing so I just have this note thing. I decided it would be best to start the first question with... So the first question is from Dawn, which that's a pretty good first question, right? Because it's Here we go. Dawn asks, thoughts on the upcoming supplement Bigby Presents Glory of the Giants? I'm glad that I got this question because it gave me the opportunity to look at this book. I didn't even know that this thing was coming out. So if anyone didn't know D&D related stuff, the newest supplement that we'll be seeing, I believe it has an August release date for 5e at least, is Bigby Presents Glory of the Giants. Funny thing, there's not much in it specifically for giants. And I'll explain what I mean, because I hadn't heard of it really. I mean, I'd heard of it, but I hadn't really looked into it until I got this question. So I looked into what you're getting for this. $60, by the way, is the pre-order cost. Just so you're aware. So let's take a look at what's in it. This is just, obviously this is speculation. I guess there's not a final edition, or unless this is from, I don't know where I read this. I got to be better about checking sources. Anyway, it has an August 15th release date, $60 pre-order. Barbs get 2 new subclasses and backgrounds, Giant Foundling and Rune Carver. That seems like not enough. 2? Come on. Giant Foundling and Rune Carver, 8 new feats. Not that they do much with feats anyway these days. There's a chapter on Giants lore, society, pantheon of gods, which that's, from a lore perspective, that's cool, I guess. There's a chapter of adventures, a chapter of locations and maps, 30 new magic items, which is nice. This is where I think the real value comes in. If you're a person who's considering dropping $60 for a book, is the bestiary that they have in it. So in chapter 6, it's a bestiary, and it's 70 new monsters, which I think is the real value in the book. Death giants, gargantua, whatever that is, elemental hulks, undead giants, kaiju, and also more details on Goliaths and furbolgs, which is nice. So, I mean, it's 192 pages. $60 is a bit pricey, I have to say, for not too much. I probably won't get it. But to be fair, I don't think I've gotten the last few supplements. It's a lot. Yeah, I don't know. It seems, wouldn't it be wiser to bring the price down a little bit if it meant selling more of them? I don't know. I don't know anything about that world of making money, and it doesn't seem, honestly, like Wizards or Hasbro really knows what the hell they're doing lately. This last year or two, doesn't seem like anybody in there really cares about what the consumer wants, which we've talked about that when we did all the OGL debate and argument and discussion, right? Like, you can afford to do this with Pepsi because there's just so many people and people don't really care enough. But when it's D&D, people care. RPGs, people give a damn. So WotC hates FLGSs, though. They want to force everyone to DDB and then into their VTT when it launches. Yeah, that's happening. Bring the price down if you met Hasbro. Yeah, I guess that's true. I guess we should be happy that it's only $60. That's such a weird place that we've gotten to in just the 15, 18 years I've been playing the game. It just felt so, back in like 2005, 2006 when I started playing, it just felt so nuanced. It felt so grassroots. And all that's gone away, I guess. Shareholders, you know? I think that the book looks okay. I don't know if it's $60, maybe 30, 35. It seems marketed as a supplement about giants, and while I guess that it is to the extent of the 2 subclasses and some lore, it seems to be more about, the value seems to be more about the bestiary. It almost feels like these are 2 ideas that are existing in one book. But just for the sake of it, I looked up what was in The Complete Warrior, which is a 3-5 book. The Complete Warrior came out in 2003. It was a supplemental book. It had 3 new base classes, full base classes. And I stopped counting after 30 new prestige classes. It looked like there were about 30 to 35 prestige classes. And in addition to all of the stuff that this has, like the lore and the maps and locations and stuff. So I don't know. They just used to do it different. There just used to be more content. But maybe that's the nature of what happens, but when you streamline the mechanics, is that there's just less, I don't know. D&D 2, The Quest for Money. Yeah. Capitalism, the sequel, starring your favorite RPG game. No, don't destroy the TTRPG. So that's where I think that I just like with anything else, as we're going to see over the course of the next couple of years, particularly as they convert to this VTT thing, and that's going to become a monthly subscription. I think we're entering a new, almost Wild West world when it comes to TTRPGs. Obviously, since the OGL stuff, a bunch of these third-party companies are making their own games. Some have really cranked up the producing third-party supplemental stuff. And I also read recently that Pathfinder is getting rid of, or Paizo rather, is scrapping the drow. Because they just don't even want to, I think that they're trying to move away from the OGL completely, which I don't blame them. So I think that it's going to be, you know, that's all of that is to say that its value is what you find in it. If you think it's worth spending $60 for 70 new monsters and some giant subclasses, go for it. I don't know that it's worth that. There's probably, you know, you could probably find cooler stuff in 3.5 just online in free PDFs that somebody's posted on some community college website for them. So hopefully that gives you somewhat of I don't know if you were looking for direction or just interested in my thoughts, but those are my thoughts. I think that it's worth it if you think it is, but I wouldn't buy it. So thank you, Dawn, for the question. The next question is from Chris. Of course. Chris asks, many of your videos include inside jokes / information, nursing edition with the crack about epic systems. What research do you do to be able to incorporate them? as little as I can. That's not true. So it depends on what it is the short answer. So for stuff like customer service, a lot of the job ones either are jobs that I've done myself or someone else at the table has done or someone that we are close to has done. So in those cases, it's very much just like chatting with those people. So, but for things like those kind of nuanced things with career stuff like nursing or like firefighter, I do research, usually in the form of looking at other content, just to kind of get an idea of, okay, what are the bits of being a nurse? Like, what's funny about being a firefighter? And usually there's a lot of good content online, particularly on YouTube or TikTok, of people that produce that kind of stuff. So I just kind of, I'll spend an hour just kind of going through videos of, stuff firefighters say, or like things that you have to deal with when you're a mechanic. And I'll just watch those videos and kind of take notes of just getting a general idea of like, okay, this is a common thing among these professions. But for like customer service, that's no research other than just my life. So any of that call center stuff or like working fast food or restaurants, like I've done all of that stuff. So I didn't have to do research for that. I already knew it. Oh, hey, Justin's here. Say hi to Justin, everyone. He's back from France. He's back in the States. But yes, Chris, so all of that's to say, it depends on what it is. More often than not, I don't know. I'd say it's about half and half. Half of the stuff I have intimate and immediate experience with, and then half of the stuff, I don't know what I'm doing, and I have to spend a little time researching. But usually it's through other content. Usually it's, because I'm trying to build jokes, so I'm going to see what other people in those fields think is funny. So it's like, what are firefighters laughing at? I do a little bit of research on that through just watching comedic firefighter sketches. And even if I don't get the stuff, I can take note of it. And it's like, okay, this is why this is funny. So this joke goes here. So it's just a lot of inspiration and influence from other creators, man. So thank you for the question. Moving right along. Everybody say hi to Justin. This next question is from Jonathan. Jonathan asks, hey Bard, I was recently watching a video from Bear the Gen X GM about Grail Campaigns. Essentially campaigns you've always wanted to run or play in if you had the perfect group and time, but have never gotten to run or play, i.e. the holy grail of RPG campaigns. What are your Grail campaigns? Thank you for the question, Jonathan. I noticed that you did share some of yours, and I kind of want to do something with those. So I'm not going to get into them now, but we will get to them in another episode. But as to your question, let's see what notes I had. Dun, dun, dun. Characters overarching different eras or even different systems. That's the note that I put down. I'd actually never considered this before I was asked. I never considered like what would be the perfect campaign or the coolest campaign, but I haven't gotten to play it, but I would want to play it under the perfect conditions. I'd never even considered it. So I considered it, and that was the note that I wrote down. Characters overarching different eras or even different systems. So I feel like I don't know what that means fully. I just know that it means that I would want to either run in one campaign over the course of a year or two, whatever, however long it goes, depending on, of course, how frequently we meet and how long the sessions are, etc. But throughout that campaign, either running one character or I don't know why I did this politician thing here. I don't know what this is. Running that one character or several running several different characters through different systems, and it's all interconnected. So maybe so I put perhaps the party just travels through time collecting party members, because that's kind of a different idea that I had for a video game when I was a kid, where it was Fable-esque almost, but essentially you're this regular person and you travel time, and along the way you fight these historical figures, and then you can have them either join your party or you can choose to have them not join your party. But essentially, a little bit of KOTOR in there too. You got to build the right party to save the world. And it's from collecting all of these different. So that would be kind of cool. But you could really kind of blend all of those ideas together into a campaign where, you know, you've got a character that is in straight up D&D, so 3.5 or Pathfinder even. And it's like medieval era fantasy type stuff. And then there is stuff going on in a D20 modern campaign where it is either a character that is a direct descendant of the character in the D&D world, or it's the same character and we just jump over time. And as we go, the mechanics switch. Doing it over different systems would be fun. You'd have to have a lot of, talk about the perfect conditions, am I right? You'd have to have a really, everybody would have to be experienced with all of the systems that you were using. But I don't know. I think it would just be cool to be able to do kind of like an everything everywhere all at once D&D campaign, sort of, where you're just jumping through and it's like, oh well, now you're in a Wild West TTRPG, so everything about your stats and the mechanics of your character is shifted slightly. So I think that would be kind of cool. Yes, it is like Chrono Trigger. Yes, Chrono Trigger is actually Chrono Trigger was actually the idea. Or rather the game that kind of inspired that idea as to working on a larger scale. And specifically the idea was just with like history, because I think that would be dope to like, that's one of the coolest things about Assassin's Creed is all the historical stuff. But like, I think it'd be really cool to have a character that it could just jump through time and like go to ancient Greece and, you know, pick up a Spartan and then go to ancient Japan and pick up a samurai and then collect these people as allies towards the greater goal. I don't know, that'd be kind of cool. And a cool way that you could do that too for a party is that maybe one person's from each system. That would be way cool. You have one player from each system, and then they have to also kind of adapt their characters. It'd be that session 0 would be long. It'd be a lot of planning and building on the character end, but I think it would be really dope. It's about... Oh, this is about... Yeah. Oh, yeah, and you know, I didn't tell people to go check it out. Everybody should go watch Threshold. It's our short film. I think that you can find it if you just Google Threshold Jacksonville. That's probably enough. But if you do Threshold Jacksonville 48, or maybe Justin, you have a link to it that you can put in the chat or something, and I can put it on the actual description of this video. But it's on Vimeo, I know. Go check it out. It's cool. It's called Threshold. It's a short film, and it just screened in Cannes, in France at Cannes. So it's pretty neato. Making a name for ourselves. Did we finish that question? Yeah. Oh, and then I also put a note here, which is funny because it kind of plays into the next question. I also put a note, Avengers Endgame style ending. Right? Because, I mean, everybody wants that. But I think that setting it up that way allows for that ending. Especially if you've got villains and the BBEG also doing it on the other side. More D&D rap, please. It is on the way. I'm working on it. I'm working on my album, trying to get it done. I'd like to get it out by the summer. I'm not sure if that's going to happen yet, but I have been making pretty good lyrical progress this week, so that's good. I finished a 16 yesterday for another song, but it's moving along. We'll get there. It's coming. Thank you for the question, Jonathan. And as I mentioned, the Avengers Endgame note leads into the next question, which is also from Chris, a different Chris. Chris asks, in the current campaign I run, the final BBEG fight will see him give a speech about how the players are really the bad guys and bring out all the NPCs they've wronged, including the thief. You know what? I'm going to start this question over because I'm just unhappy with my enunciation of this. We're going to start again. In the current campaign I run, the final BBEG fight will see him give a speech about how the players are really the bad guys and bring out all the NPCs they've wronged, including the thief they just infected with lycanthropy. Then all of the NPCs they've helped or befriended along the way will arrive, culminating in a large Avengers Endgame style battle. Wanted to see what you in chat think about this and if anyone's done it. So I think this is way cool. And the note that I put for this question is Seinfeld Endgame. Because that's really what that is, I think. So I don't know if anybody ever saw the Seinfeld finale or if anyone's a Seinfeld fan. But in the end of Seinfeld, in the finale, they're essentially put on trial for all of their terrible behaviors. And that's what they do, is everybody that they've wronged comes through and testifies against them in court. I thought it was hilarious. Some people didn't like the ending. There are mixed reviews about the finale. I thought it was really funny. I thought that was the only way you could end that show. Is that it's just like they're all terrible, all of them, for different reasons, but they're all just awful. That's kind of the point. And so I think like putting them all in jail for being bad people is hilarious. So you're kind of doing that with this, right? It's like, okay, so, but I think it's really smart for D&D because D&D lends itself to people being murder hobos and doing crazy stuff. So the idea that they would have to, at a minimum, face these people they've wronged, at a maximum, might die at their hand, depending on what you want to do with that, as to the development of the Avengers Endgame style battle. You know, maybe, well, how far are you into it, Chris? Are you here? Is this Chris that asked this question here? How far are you into the campaign? Because I think that this is a really great idea. And I should be looking at chat because that was part of the question. Sounds cool but complex, yeah. Your players are going to love that fight. Make sure you have a good playlist of epic fight music for it. Yeah, no doubt. Biggest problem with a scene like that is going to be running the RP in combat with the sheer number of things in initiative. That's true. Yeah, I don't see anything. I think it's really, really cool. And I think you can, if you wanted to, you could even kind of combine some of the stuff I was talking about in the last question with that. You know, obviously not over. Oh, thank you, Chris. There's the link for the threshold. And I'm going to, you know what? I'm going to steal this real quick and just put it in here. Because really should have done that before. Oh no, where did it go? Sorry, everybody. Copy. I sound like an old man trying to figure out the computer. Okay, there it is. Now it's in the description. Yikes. Yikes McGillicuddy. Yeah, Seinfeld Endgame sounds dope to me. 2 DMs would make it easier, that's true. You should use some sort of war game rules. That might help. We've done stuff like that, I think, in the past for sure, where if it's some huge mega epic throwdown and there's a bunch of people, you just roll. You know, you roll to attack and then you kill. You know, you just wipe out 10 people. But it depends on what the fight is, I guess. I mean, if they're all full-fledged characters and it's like 7 on 7 or 7 on 10 or something, that's going to be crazy town. I would have a bunch of pre-rolls on hand to keep combat going. Still roll them and chuckle at things, but have the math done. Yeah, no doubt. There's a lot of fudging going on in that, just because of the sheer chaos that it's going to be. And if the players don't see it coming, it's going to be even more chaotic. So maybe sprinkle a little breadcrumbs on that without fully giving it away. The thief they infected with lycanthropy is so funny. They just have to... It's going to all happen at once. That's going to be great. No long monologues. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Well, thanks for the question, Chris. Chris is always coming through with the questions, you know? And I've actually got some longer questions coming up here on the second half of the pod. I've actually split both 5 and 6 into 2 separate slides because they're a bit more involved questions, but I think that they're interesting and cool nonetheless. So thank you for the question, Chris. I think it's a dope idea. Go forth and roll 20s. Have fun. Try and make it as easy for yourself as you can. Don't get so excited about how cool the idea is that you don't prepare for the chaos that's going to ensue when that happens. Not False Hydra yet, but it's coming. That might be the one that we do for episode 32, since that one's going to be so important. So thank you for the question, Chris. This next question, according to my listo names, is from James. And James asks, I'm a big fan of the podcast, shows, and really digging your music. You're truly a Renaissance man. Oh, you're too kind. I've been playing with a group of players for a while, and we often discuss the games we play to ensure everyone is having fun. However, I seem to be the only one bothered by something. The issue is our DM never kills our characters, regardless of what we do, and it feels like all the stakes have been removed. I introduced them to a Dungeon Crawl Classics, a game similar to AD&D but with simpler rules. However, they didn't enjoy it at all, so we won't be switching systems anytime soon. While I'm currently content with the story-driven game as an excuse to hang out, being the only one with the gripe makes me feel a bit crazy. I guess I'm just seeking some wisdom and advice on this matter. So number one, I don't think it's crazy for you to want to have the stake of death for your character. This, I think, goes back to stuff that we've talked about before when it comes to communication as to expectations of the game. If you come from more of an old school TTRPG world of playing harder, quote unquote, obviously more complex and more brutal systems, earlier RPGs, AD&D stuff even in comparison to like 5e. What you might consider is getting a new group. Because one of the things that I noted in the question is that you said, let's go back to that. I'm content with the story-driven game as an excuse to hang out. I don't know. Maybe it sounds like you're friendly with these people, obviously. They're your friends, and you like hanging out with them. And you just play because they all enjoy it, even though you're not really feeling it. You got to scratch that itch somewhere, yeah? I think you should consider maybe looking for a different group. Because it seems that they were open to trying that, or at least seeing what that would look like on them as a party, and they weren't that receptive to it. So I think the real question for yourself is hanging out with them more important, or is you enjoying the game more important? And what does that mean in terms of your time? Because if you can hang out with them without playing the game, that would be more ideal for you, right? Maybe you can't. It's hard enough to schedule games as it is. So if I guess I can see the quandary there, because scheduling is a big pain. And if you've got a steady group that's playing, even if you're not totally down with the campaign, maybe you could just have the DM raise the stakes for you. Let me see what chat's saying. I also like using lingering injury rules. Let my player know my encounters are hard to deadly. I have multiple ways to solve them. Depends on what kind of campaign you want. In some places, the characters should be true heroes. In Ravenloft, they are red shirts at best. Find a group playing Paranoia if you want to die. Yeah, I mean, there definitely are some games that are going to give you that maybe they don't want to play, but you could find a group at like an FLGS or something to play with, or a group online to play with. Oh, that's a good idea from Rocco. You could bring in a new player, a guest DM. That could be kind of cool. Somebody new. But it seems like the real root of the problem is that you just aren't having fun in the game, and the only reason you're really playing at this point is to hang out with your friends. So it might be better to scratch the itch of hardcore TTRPG with another group. Just because you're really friendly and cool with these people doesn't necessarily mean that they're the right party for you to be playing. Clearly, you're not having the most fun that you could have. Don't you think that it would be better for you if you had like a group that you went to every other Thursday at the FLGS to play hardcore like Warhammer games and stuff that were like really high stakes, and then you just hung out with your friends doing other stuff, not even gaming? That's a consideration. Made a ranger and was RP the right way, and the rest of my group was not happy with me, and the DM was just chill. There's just not a simple answer to that question. Yeah, there's not. Because the advice I would give you is the advice you've already put into action, which is to be like, hey, try this game and see how that goes. If they're not receptive to it and you still want to get that enjoyment, then I would just say look for a different group. What you could do, if you think the DM won't kill you, keep trying more and more insane tactics to see how ridiculous you can get it to be before you die. That's not terrible advice either. You could just start murder hoboing and force the DM's hand. But if it's not natural, they might not like that. So that's why I think that it might be better to find a different group for that specific interest. And then just hang out with your friends to hang out with your friends. Because, I like hanging out with my friends as often as I can, I guess, but I don't do it very much. I'm a homebody. I'm a hermit. I stay at the house and just make stuff. So I certainly wouldn't put myself in a position where I was doing something in spite of disliking it just to hang out. I'd find other ways to hang out. It's just like my opinion, though. Start pushing all the buttons, Bird says. Yeah. C. Yeah. Challenge the DM, maybe. Try and seduce a succubus. You can make it a challenge for the DM to try and kill the entire party. That could be cool. Yeah. Maybe you could just like bully it out of him. Like, hey, or her, whoever the DM is, just like, oh yeah, I don't think you can do it. Those kind of exercises, I think, are kind of fun, too. One-shots, palate cleansers in that respect. Over the years, especially during long campaigns, it's kind of fun to just step aside and be like, all right, so we're just going to be doing, like, PvP stuff for the night. Like, just to try it out. Don't ruin a game just because you can, Scapelli says. That's a pretty good point, I guess. You don't want to push the DM. You don't want your quest for more stakes from the DM and your pushing of it to result in the other players not having a good time. So it all comes back down to just, I guess, expectations. We always go through ridiculous rules through the DM. It fits the character, and the narrative is usually okay. Why not? Yeah, I just think that, again, it all comes back to the expectations of what people are expecting at the table. If you, when you sit down and play a TTRPG, are expecting high stakes, challenging things when it comes to mechanics, challenging things when it comes to puzzles and stuff, and everyone else at the table is just kind of casual, I don't know that that's going to change by doing anything other than seeking out a group that is more in line with what you're looking for at the table. So there we go. I run an annual PvP game. Players love it. Yeah, that's always fun. And then Scapelli says you can do both. Find a competitive group to play with and keep the RP story driven from campaign. Yeah, that's true too. I didn't mention that earlier. I said something about how you just hang out with your friends without playing. But if it's not too awful for you to play the story thing, that's kind of the best of both worlds, really. Probably a nightmare to schedule, but if you could figure it out, that'd be the move. Because then you could get your high stakes competitive stuff done with one group, and then you could still get to hang out with your friends, and then take more of an RP story approach. I think whatever's the most important to you. It sounds like hanging out with your friends is the most important to you because you don't really like the game all that much. Or at a minimum, it's losing its luster, and you're still kind of hanging in there. So I would say think about yourself in terms of how you're going to be able to get that satisfied if you can't with this group, which it seems like you can't. And that's not really anybody's fault. It's just, they tried it. They didn't seem to really vibe with it. So there are definitely people that take it seriously. And I think, as a matter of fact, I only had one note on, even though this is a long question, I had one note was Warhammer. 40K. That's high stakes. I've been told, from what I understand. But thank you for the question, James. I don't know if that gives you any kind of guidance, but I hope that it gives you at least something to think about. Consider what you want from the game, and if you can't get it from this group, find it somewhere else. Warhammer. There's a Warhammer player. Grimdark, yeah. Death should have been addressed at session 0, Jay says. Gotta risk it to make it matter. Interesting. It's a good point. Yeah, I keep circling back to that expectations thing. Not saying that you or anyone at the table did anything wrong here, but it's just for future reference. This is a thing that can be avoided. It's a conversation that you could have session 0, like, hey, is there a chance that we can die? Because if there's not, I don't really want to play. Then you can avoid getting yourself into a scenario where you're like 3 months into a campaign and you're like, this is, I am a person, personally, who gains a lot of enjoyment in playing the game from the funny stuff that happens. I don't really care too much about the overall RP or the overall story. I really don't care all that much about mechanics. For me, it's just about embodying the character and having fun with it. But that's me. So I would probably love the group where it's like, yeah, we're not really, it's not really high stakes. We're just it's all about the story and having fun. I would love that. But someone like you who's looking for a more competitive thing wouldn't like that. So go find that. That's my advice. Expectation, communication, and finding what makes you happy in RPGing. So thank you. Moving on to the next 2 slate question. This one is from Kyle. Kyle asks, I am a relatively new player in a 5e D&D module campaign with a group of total strangers at the local game store. I've created a non-violent cleric character, nod to World's Best RPG. Thank you. Benvolio is my happy-go-lucky, goofy, hermit life cleric character that tries to find peaceful solutions before combat. I imagine he's sort of a Forrest Gump, live and let live hippie type. I want to cooperate and get along with the table, but also wanted to try something new. How do I not be that guy that puts his PC's semi-rigid moral code in the way of other players' fun at the table for combat? I actually took some time to think about this question and make some relatively extensive notes about it. But this is what I wrote down, and then we can elaborate. The fact that you have this in mind gives you an advantage in achieving that goal. That's the first thing, right? So self-awareness is important. Your ability to recognize not wanting to be that guy goes a long way in you not being that guy. So that's one positive. Lots of people would just play the PC and everyone else be damned. There are people that do that. And I'm not saying, by the way, that there's anything wrong with that. That's a way to play. I think that it's valid. It's like, no, this is the character. This is what it would do. This is what he does. I think that's valid. But doesn't sound like that's what you want to do. In fact, it sounds like you want the opposite. You want to be able to walk this tightrope between doing what you want to, but also not interfering with the group's experience, which is kind of you. Benvolio sounds fantastic. I think that LG or even CG or LN characters can not only be successful in groups of murder hobos, they can often be some of the highlights of the campaign. So I wrote Airships of Nuada down because, well, alignment's not what it used to be, yeah. But in the Airships of Nuada campaign, Jay plays a cleric who is very much on that tip. So I don't know if you've seen those episodes on our page, but you can go over on our, well, you're already here if you're watching, on our YouTube channel. On the playlist, you can find some of the campaigns we've played. The first one we played was the We Play, which was a 5e campaign. They're both 5e campaigns, the two main ones that are on that have been finished. The first was the We Play, but the second one was Airships of Nuada. And Jay played a cleric character that was very similar to this. He was very just kind of like happy-go-lucky, nice guy, didn't want to fight, was just kind of a peacemaker type guy. And he made it work. Now, to be honest, I don't remember how, because in that particular campaign, there was a lot going on. But I definitely remember and thought of him when I got this question. That's a good example. His RP throughout that campaign, I think, is a great example of how to get that done. The other thing, too, is that just because Benvolio doesn't want to fight doesn't necessarily mean that he has to protest his being there. So I think that some of this comes to RP. I think that if you can create enough of an RP around the character's reason for being there in the first place, then it'll be a lot easier. Because whoa, I totally just completely lost my train of thought there. I saw something in the comments that was like, it's got to go. Smash that like. Thank you, Black Corp. Appreciate it. Yes, thank you for the likes. It's appreciated. What were we talking about? Being successful as that guy who doesn't want to fight. I think that that's cool RP. I think you should lean into it. And I think that there is also, I'll say this about that whole concept of, not wanting to make anyone else, not wanting to cheapen anyone else's experience, but also wanting to be true to the character that you've created and like play that character out and see it through. I think that there's a level of responsibility for everyone at the table, not just you. So it's nice to see that you're thinking about it, because it shows that you're aware of the fact that what you do affects the table, which is not necessarily the case for everyone. There are some people that don't even consider that, and then there are some people that consider it, but it's not relevant to what their experience is about. They're more about competitive or whatever it is. There's tons of reasons to play RPGs. But all of that's to say that I think you having that in mind is a good thing, and there's responsibility in other players at the table of how they respond to that too. So yes, there is the player that's shouting, this is what my character would do, but there are also everyone else at the table. And so if your character is protesting something that your party is doing, I think that there's a bit of an RP responsibility on the rest of the party to react to that in a way that is conducive to progressing the story forward, at least, if not progressing the goals of the party forward. There's a reason that all of your characters are together, I'm assuming, I would hope, theoretically. There's a reason that you're all together, whether it's because you've been together or because you're coming together in this new quest for the campaign. There's a reason that you're all there. And so I think that you can still protest the idea of fighting, and the idea of looting, the idea of crime or immoral acts in general, without being that guy. Because I think that everybody else at the table can understand. I mean, I understand it just fine. And by the way, if you were at my table with that character, I wouldn't see that as anything other than more data that I can use in developing my own character. How much meta do you allow to let people work out those differences? Oh, I think that they're having a different conversation separate from what we're talking about. Or maybe they're talking about what we're talking about. I had a situation with the opposite, Anthony says. Lawful good paladin wanted to burn down a church with people inside. Whoa. Yeah, and that, well, you know, in 3.5 they could have done that, but then they would have lost all their stuff. As a DM, I'd give you NPCs to rescue and save. It's never a bad thing to have a character that acts as a moral compass for the party. I've seen many a murder hobo have some actual character development. That's a good point, too. There might be somebody in there that we talked about earlier that's just like, oh, no, I'm here to compete and I'm going to min-max my character and kill the most stuff and be the most DPR, and that's what I'm doing. And they might find along the way themselves their character developing through that experience with being around that cleric guy. And hey, who knows? Maybe your cleric becomes not so lawful good. You could go the other direction. If you wanted to do that, obviously, right? You want to be true to your character, but it's a consideration. That's a real easy solution. That's the can't beat 'em, if you can't beat 'em, join 'em solution. It's just like, oh, well, if you're worried about being that guy by being a pacifist, just turn into a murder hobo yourself. But really, I think you'll be fine. I think that overall you might be overthinking it a little. I think it's good that you're thinking about it. I'm flattered, by the way, that it's based on the line in RPG. The pacifist type character. But I think that they'll be fine. It sounds like a cool character. It sounds like a pretty common idea. Like, not to say that it's not unique. Benvolio is a cool name too. But I just mean that I don't think it's crazy. And if you were at my table, I wouldn't consider you that guy. I would see it rather as a challenge. I, as a player, would be like, oh, okay, how are we going to get around this guy? Are we going to have to, like, do stuff where he can't see us? Like, that's what I mean earlier when I said about the responsibility of the other players. It's not just all on you. It's not just all your responsibility to make sure Benvolio's not that guy. There's however many other players there are at the table, and there's also the DM. So, But if you make that heel turn, lean hard into it. Yeah, agreed. If you do go that route and decide to just to throw in with them, go full bore. Hopefully that gives you some sort of an answer. I think that was a pretty good answer. I think you're fine, Kyle. Thank you for the question. I appreciate it. I have not seen Gamers 2 Dorkness Riot. I don't know if I've seen that or not. I don't know. I'm bad at remembering movies that I've seen. We had a pacifist druid in our group once, and the player based her on the girl from the movie Sky High that could manipulate plants. Oh, that's way cool. Yeah, like a poison ivy, but they're a good guy. That's pretty dope. All right, thank you for the question, Kyle. We have to get to this last one because, yikes, we're knocking on the door of an hour, folks. I don't know how this happens. It goes by so fast. But there's another little thing I want to talk about after this question. But let's get into it. This is our last question from Mal. And Mal asks, as a player, I sometimes find myself getting nervous during role-playing moments. My friend, who originally invited me to the group, says it isn't noticeable, but I definitely feel it. Any advice for ignoring the nerves and staying immersed in the RP? Thanks for the show. Thanks for the question. The note that I put as an answer to this is give your character a flaw or a trait that distracts from that. And spoiler alert, that's what I do. It occurs to me, that's what I do. Attach yourself to fun, unique, or interesting ideas that can serve as RP. Yeah? So here's a perfect example. Augustus Montgomery. That guy was not much of a character in the sense of RP. He was not all that fully fleshed out when I started playing him, and honestly, because it was a situation where I needed to be ready for the next week, I didn't put the time into building the character that I probably normally would have. That's not to say that I didn't like playing Augustus Montgomery. He was awesome. But all of that's to say that Augustus Montgomery's entire RP was that he had a monocle and that he would lift the monocle up and introduce himself all the time. And that was Augustus Montgomery. And he had memorable RP. Oh, see you later, Nebraska. Thanks for hanging out. Appreciate it. He had memorable RP without having to do much. So literally, I could just, hello, my name is Augustus Montgomery. And that was my RP contribution. It doesn't have to be as simple as that or only that, but I just mean that if you can do something that not only takes other people's minds off of your quote-unquote performance, it takes your own mind off of it. Because if you're worried about how the voice sounds, you're worried less about what people think of it. If that makes sense. If you give yourself stuff to do, then it distracts you from getting worried about what's going on. So if you're doing a voice, you could focus on just doing the voice, and you don't really have to worry about what you're saying. That's not really important because you're focused on the voice. And the voice serves as the RP. So instead of making it a thing where it's like, oh, wow, I have to, give them the RP as this performance, you can do it more simply, I think, than maybe you realize. You might be overthinking a little about what is expected from you in terms of RP. I think that as long as you are contributing generally to the story, moving along forward and developing your character and your contribution to developing the other characters comes in developing your own. Ish. Mostly. But Yeah. So that I think is a really good way. That's what I do. And not that I suffer too much with nerves. I mean, everybody gets nervous. I still get nerves. I still worry, but probably not as much as a regular person just cuz I'm a bit of a ham. But that's fine. Prima donna. That said, if people are focused on something else, if it's like, I don't know, like with Studebaker Peppercorn, like walking away and stuff, it's like I don't have to put too much thought into his RP because that is his RP. He's this old turtle who forgets stuff and starts cobbling shoes in the middle of combat. That's RP without being overly performative or, all eyes are on me. I think that if you come up with little quirks or little interesting character traits, this is all to say if you put energy into developing the character, then you can give yourself almost RP armor in that sense, because it's just like, oh, no, this is the RP. And it's simple for you, and it's memorable and enjoyable for others. As a DM, I just try and mimic an existing character from a show or movie and put a note next to their name so I remember that's what they sound like. Oh, yeah. Usually the voice is enough. Confide in the DM with anxiety. They should help you as a player also. I've done this as a DM. That's true. Yeah, you could just ask the DM straight up about it. I don't think anyone would ever think anything terrible about you anyways, no matter how nervous you are. That's very true. Yeah, people usually are not as, in my experience, personally, in my experience, people usually aren't even thinking about you at all. Like, that sounds rough, but like, I'd say like 90% of the time, people aren't even thinking about you. They're thinking about them. They're thinking about, or somebody they love, or they're thinking about something else. It's very rare that they're even thinking about you to begin with. And then even in those moments where, all the eyes are on you for your moment of RP, even in those moments, they all are probably nervous when having their moment. And so knowing that, I don't think that they're going to be as judgmental of you as you are on yourself. So just take it easy on yourself a little bit and just have fun. I think that they'll be fine. Talking about the subject, any tips on a first-time bard? Do what you have. Do what's fun. Do what's fun. Even if it doesn't necessarily make sense or fit in with the party, fun. And the reason that I say that is if you can make sure that your first experience playing a bard is fun, I mean, you can't, of course, know that for sure, but if your first experience as a bard is fun, ooh-wee howdy. It'll open a whole new world of barding. I would say it depends on what you're looking for in the experience, but I would say do whatever is the most fun. And College of Whispers. Oh, wow. Well, thank you for the question, Mal. Wow howdy. Here we are again at the end. And the note that I have here at the end is actually a video that I was going to make. I'll probably still make a TikTok about it, but we can just talk about it here for a while because I think it's pretty cool. Just kind of bend your ears on this plan. So I had an idea recently. I was thinking about the concept of what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. And I thought about what that would look like as a D&D town called Secret Town. In Secret Town, there are 2 entrances to the town. Yes, they're archways. And in those archways are portals. So they're really just portals at either end of the city. But they're the only way in and out of the city. When you go into the city, nothing happens. But when you go out of the city, there is an enchantment in these portals that's sort of a modify memory situation. There's also I think there's a homebrew spell called Memory Wipe or Wipe Memory. But essentially, it's the pen from Men in Black for anybody leaving the town. So quite literally, whatever happens in Secret Town stays there, because anyone who leaves doesn't have any memory of what happened. So lots of stuff goes on in there that is not necessarily good, because upon leaving, you forget about it completely. I think the way that you put that on its head as to a plot line in D&D is by having someone gain the ability to take information out. So someone, I mean, I guess that's overly complicated. The short way of saying that is someone found a way to leave the city that's not one of those two portals. So that does sound like a great plot for a false Hydra. Whoa, hey, maybe we can combine those ideas when we talk about false Hydra and Secret Town. But no one remembers what happens only when they leave. And also, the only way that the players would know about this place or learn about this place is through rumor. For sure. This wouldn't be any kind of official place. It would just be rumored that it existed. Could they not just write stuff down? That's a good point. Well, it's magic, right? So, like, maybe anything that is done there can't exist outside, including memories. I don't know. Maybe a portable hole in someone's bag or something. They get around the neuralizer is to carve it into their skin, even unconsciously. Whoa. That's interesting. Kind of like Lantern. Dark Town. Yeah. I don't know, I just thought that was kind of neat. I think that it lends itself to a cool story. And it's kind of, it's really kind of scary, honestly. The idea of going in, because it's almost like a little bit of Westworld in there too, right? Like the man in the black hat, Ed Harris, who was a monster in that first season, I gotta say. He's a great actor. That guy, there'd be a lot of that guy in Secret Town. A lot of people just in there, just doing whatever they want to do because they know that upon leaving, that's a point I probably didn't mention, but should. There's not really any rules in Secret Town. So it's just kind of the Wild West, do whatever. And so, yeah, people go in there and who knows what happens. And then when you leave, you don't know. But stuff started to leak out, either people or documents or something. Info's coming out of Secret Town. And the party's got to go investigate. So you can have that one for free. Wow, here we are once again. We're done with the podcast. Before we go, just a reminder, everyone please send your questions, concerns, comments, complaints, criticisms to bardadvice@gmail.com. It also looks like bardadvice@gmail.com. You can get your merch at manshorts.com. And you can contribute to anything that I'm doing musically on Cash App, PayPal, or Venmo, all of which are Yazik, Yahzick. I am working on the third album. I want to thank everyone again for joining this evening. Much appreciation to all the patrons, super chatters, likers, commenters, subscribers, members. Happy Backwards 420 episode. Whoa. That's cool. So thank you everyone for joining. I will be back next week. Same Bard time, same Bard channel. 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the Man Shorts YouTube channel. And this audio for the podcast will be available tomorrow at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Oh, well, thank you. Thank you for watching them, you know? I mean, I certainly wouldn't make them if you weren't watching them. So thank you. I'll be back next Friday. This podcast will be available tomorrow at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Thank you all for joining me. I hope you have a fantastic